Former GGs can leave office and still expense taxpayers more than $200,000 every year for the rest of their lives. And that extends up to 6 months after they die.
Hey everyone, you're listening to the Canadian Taxpayers podcast. I'm Franco Terrazzano, the CTF's federal director and spokesperson here in Ottawa. I'm joined with our brand new investigative journalist, Mr. Ryan Thorpe. And Ryan's been a busy man. He's been here for all of 3.5 minutes, but he's already been digging up some good stories. Now, Ryan, our CTF supporters know that the Governor General is no stranger to the taxpayer cookie jar, but you dug up some more wasteful spending coming out of Rideau Hall. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, Franco. Well, the Governor General landed a $40,000 salary increase during the pandemic. So let me break down the numbers for you. In 2019, the Governor General's salary was $302,000. In 2022, the Governor General's salary was $342,000, right? And I think the context is important here. This is a time period when many Canadians across the country are losing their jobs. Businesses are going under. People who keep their jobs are in many cases forced to take pay cuts. Right now, people are struggling to afford groceries. Mortgage payments are through the roof, and people are worried about a recession on the horizon. And meanwhile, the Governor General got a $40,000 pay raise during the pandemic.
Folks, let this sink in for a quick second here, okay? Before the pandemic, you already have the Governor General's salary above $300,000. Then throughout the pandemic, since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Governor General gets a $40,000 pay bump. Ryan, big question in my head right now is, well, why in the world would the Governor General even need an extra $40,000?
Yeah, it's a good question. The government tells us that the pay must increase every year because it's legislated in the Governor General Act. So these bureaucrats and politicians, it seems to me, are trying to duck accountability, right? What can they do? It's legislated. Well, Franco, I'm new to the CTF, but I already know that we pay MPs 6 figures to change laws. So maybe one of them could get off their butts and do that, right? The Governor General Act is not chiseled into stone. It's not set in aspect. This could be changed. They could begin changing the law right now to stop and reverse these pay hikes. But the government isn't doing that. It's rubber stamping pay raises.
Yeah, rubber stamping pay raises while people can't afford the price of ground beef at the grocery store, no less. Okay, Ryan, I'm going to do my best to actually say this sentence as a devil's advocate without laughing. Okay, so bear with me, folks. I see online that the Governor General should be getting salary increases because inflation is high. Okay, what do you say to that?
First, the annual salary increases that we've seen, they're coming in slightly higher than the rate of inflation. So it isn't simply that this is just tacked on to match the rate of inflation. But I think the broader question is, why should the Governor General be getting salary increases for doing the same job, right? It's not as if the scope of her duties have increased here. It's not like the Governor General's rent is going up, right? Taxpayers are already paying for the Governor General to live in a mansion, Rideau Hall. And as we know, thanks to some earlier work from the CTF, the Governor General can expense as much beef Wellington as she can stomach. So why does the Governor General need a $40,000 pay hike? I think it's a valid question.
Yeah, folks. I mean, remember, that beef Wellington dig right there by our new friend Ryan. That was about the that week-long trip to the Middle East that the Governor General Mary Simon and her entourage took. A week-long trip, and they somehow managed to rack up nearly 6 figures on fancy airplane food. They enjoyed beef Wellington, beef carpaccio, pork stuffed tenderloin. They enjoyed a trip that ended up costing us taxpayers over $1 million for a week. But what did us taxpayers get of value for that trip? All I hear are crickets. Now, the National Post worked with the CTF to publish those receipts in its newspaper. And after Ryan did the good digging to find out that the Governor General had a $40,000 salary bump during the pandemic, the National Post, Ryan, ran your story on his front page. So just take us behind the curtains here on how you dug up the story and how we worked with the National Post to get the information out there.
Well, I was digging through the public accounts, and that's when I noticed that the Governor General's salary was going up during the pandemic years. So I reached out to the government to confirm that this was indeed happening. Quite frankly, I was pretty shocked. I couldn't believe the Governor General would be getting raises during the pandemic when the salary was already more than $300,000 to begin with. So the government confirmed that it indeed had been increasing by $40,000 to be clear since 2019. And then the government confirmed that the Governor General's salary is going to be increasing yet again, right? We don't know what that salary increase is going to be yet. I'm told that it hasn't been determined, but that is certainly something that I'm going to be keeping my eye on moving forward.
Okay, so I know it's going to get even crazier, listeners and viewers of this. So yeah, the Governor General's salary right now, while they're in office, is $342,000 smackers, $342,000. But some of the benefits in retirement are even crazier than this salary. Ryan, why don't you break down what they're getting when they leave office?
Yeah, that's right. I think the craziest perk, I mean, there's a lot of perks that come with this gig. I think the craziest one is the expense account for former governors generals. So former GGs can leave office and still expense taxpayers more than $200,000 every year for the rest of their lives. Okay. And that extends up to 6 months after they die. Right. So even after, they're 6 feet under the dirt, they're still expensing taxpayers. At least they can. I mean, I've never heard of anything like that. I don't know what to make of it, really.
Yeah, you know what I always think of, hey, the M. Night Shyamalan movie, I See Dead People. Folks, we get expensed by dead people here in Canada. What a plot twist, hey? But there's another crazy expense, and that's the pension.
Yeah, that's right. So on top of the massive salary that they already get when they're in office, on top of this expense account that is very significant, former governors generals can get $150,000 per year as a pension. And that is for the rest of their lives. So right now we have 5 former living governors general. And if they keep collecting the pension to the age of 90, that is going to cost taxpayers about $18 million. And the craziest part about this is they get the full pension regardless of how long they served, right? So we call this the Payette pension problem. The last GG, Julie Payette, left the role after serving a little more than 3 years. And I think it's worth noting that there was a fair degree of controversy that swirled around her during that time period. Well, she is still eligible to receive more than $4 million through her pension if she continues to collect it up until the age of 90. And quite frankly, I think that's crazy.
Well, you think it's crazy, Ryan, because it is crazy. Ryan, you did a great job digging this up, man, in your first hour and a half on the job. You've already broke a few stories. One of the stories is this one: Governor General pockets, or lands, we should say, $40,000 increase to the salary since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. That story made its way onto the front page of the National Post. So not a bad first week on the job, Ryan. For our listeners out there, if you're mad, you should be mad. Let's take some action. Why don't we? We have 2 opportunities here to push for change. Okay. Number 1 is that there's currently a parliamentary committee right now looking at the Governor General's expenses. Okay. Number 2, budget is right around the corner. So now is the perfect time for those 2 reasons to contact your member of parliament and tell them that this is crazy. Enough's enough. Let's rein in these platinum perks for the Governor General.